the Pete Souza Show. Today, we're talking about the Olympics. We're also talking about, we have a little sports potpourri. NBA broadcaster Scott Lauer joins us. We talk about, Scott is a TV aficionado, and he's also an NBA aficionado, so we talk about the Olympics. We talk about USA basketball at the Olympics. We talk about, is there a little bit of a lack of interest? And before we get to Scott, I want to talk a little bit about the Olympics, what I saw, some of my thoughts and impressions. The opening ceremonies, I thought, throw all that politics stuff out of it because I'm not talking about that. But I want to talk about the broadcast itself. You had Mike Tirico, you had Kelly Clarkson, you had Peyton Manning. Now, here's my thinking on this. I think Kelly Clarkson is wildly talented, and I think that there's a demographic that she attracts. As the night went on, though, I felt like we're getting a lot of this. This is a steady diet of Kelly Clarkson. And I was surprised because if you think about the Olympics, you think about all the possibilities in that role, even if it's going to be Savannah Guthrie. When you look at a pie chart of the Olympic coverage and that opening ceremonies, Kelly Clarkson was a huge part of the pie. I also think that was an example of how difficult it can be to lump, for lack of a better term, I've been saying that a lot basically, lack of a better term, but to lump a lot of talent together for a particular event and have them working out the kinks on live television. And I think we saw that a little bit. And what's that a window into? In my opinion, that is a window into how hard live television can be. Speaking of live television, so this week, today, my last day at KWTX. 9 years doing TV news. KWTX, CBS affiliate here in Central Texas. An amazing experience working in local news. The only issue has been, one, getting up at 3 a.m. for 7 years here in Waco, and 2 before that in Monroe. And gosh, I think that is the only issue. Oh, and the big issue was it was interfering with, my love of calling games primarily for ESPN. And so I had to make a decision. So, the decision it was actually easy to make, right, ultimately. But that decision will see me here doing this show every day coming up starting in early September. And it'll also see me call more games. So it's perfect. The one thing I'll say I'll say a lot of stuff, I guess, but you never know. I'm so far from like a finished product, or there's a lot more work to be done over here. And hopefully I'll be that. I always say I don't want to be that NFL team or sports team that they say, oof, it's almost like they didn't lose. They just ran out of time. Like a great comeback. Like the great comeback is underway. And regardless of the outcome, you can't be attached to that, right? I try not to. I try to practice not being that. You just have gratitude, and you really do enjoy the ride. For me, that's when I'm kind of even-keeled and living on the beam. But I never thought I wanted to be in TV news. And then there was a time when I was in TV news and doing 2.5 hours of morning news every morning in Monroe, Louisiana, and Waco, 2 places I thought that I'd never live and never had wanted to live. I had no idea that it was sort of building my skill set up to a level where, not some crazy elite level, but to a level where when I finally got the opportunity to do what I'd always wanted to do, which was call games, that it came so much easier to me on television in a sense where I knew all the little things to do, the nuances, in and out of breaks, starting a show, filling time. That's what I developed over many years of working in local TV. And it's why when I got the opportunity to do what I love to do, I think there was a, wow, this is coming easy to him. Well, it didn't come easy for me. I mean, I had to start in Monroe. I've talked about it here with Zach before. I mean, I was a dyslexic guy after I got sober, trying to read a teleprompter in this whole new career. And let's just say it wasn't pretty. Someday I'll have to share some footage with you guys. But so does it come easy? No. But what did Ringo Starr say? It don't come easy, but over time you build. So I say all that to say, you never have any idea where the road is going to take you. I can't emphasize enough that my road, there's a lot more to go down, but I'm enjoying where I am. Like I said, enjoying the ride. But I never thought that television news would be an entree into calling national games, local television news. I never thought that. And there was a point in time where I just accepted being in local news, and I loved it, some parts of it. But here it is. It set me up for something that I'd always wanted to do, and I never expected that. So that's enough of my Sermon on the Mount. We definitely are in summertime, so we're ramping up here for the NFL, and for, literally tomorrow night's going to be the Hall of Fame game, so I can't wait. Right now, though, we're going to get to Scott Lauer. We're going to talk about the Olympics. We're going to talk about USA basketball and a little bit of sports potpourri, and we talk about a good friend of ours who we lost last week way too soon. So here's Scott Lauer. So you are one of our very best NBA analysts and experts. So lucky for you, we're not talking baseball, even though I do have my strawberry jersey on once again. Which you got to love that, by the way. You're a Westchester, New York guy.
Right. Now, I was actually, interestingly, Dodgers fan growing up. I was a Steve Sax fan, if you remember Sax.
Who ended up on the Yankees.
Well, right. So I was rooting for the LA Dodgers in the 80s. They won the championship in 88. That was the Kirk Gibson
home run year. They beat the Mets in the NLCS.
Yeah, of course. They beat Doc Gooden and shocked the world with that. And then Sax defected the very next off season to the Yankees. So it was beautiful. So I became a Yankees fan because of him.
And by the way, those were some of the worst years in Yankee history that you guys moved into.
Yeah. Well, Steinbrenner frustrated me for a while.
There's an amazing documentary, Scott, on Peacock about the 1990 New York Yankees. I will send you a link to it, about how everything that could have gone wrong with that team did go wrong. It talks about Pascual Perez, Mel Hall.
Was that when Buck Showalter was
Buck Showalter, who it was like he was going to get fired at any moment. Steinbrenner was trying to get someone to follow Dave Winfield around, right? He was almost creating a scenario where Dave Winfield was involved with this unsavory bookie, which turned out it wasn't even true. It's great.
Well, I remember Showalter had a line that year, and I always respected him. And he basically called out Steinbrenner while he was on the job. He said, things are not going to go well here because of that man. And he pointed to the booth where Steinbrenner used to watch the games.
Yeah.
And I had enormous respect for Showalter for doing that.
Steinbrenner got suspended that year. For that, at some point that year, he got suspended for about 2 years because of his dealings with, shady characters that he was trying to get to incriminate Dave Winfield.
He could have run for office.
That's Scott.
We can't mix politics and sports. We know that.
All right. So look. So, I first thing I want to ask you. You're a resident NBA expert, and I'm curious because we keep it authentic here. I know you're not terribly interested in USA basketball and the Olympics, but you are not unique in that matter. Why are people not interested, or as interested globally about, or should I say country-wise, in USA basketball?
See, my whole thing is I kind of miss some of the older setups where you had the college kids more involved playing. I mean, with all due respect, is there a lot of drama heading into this? I mean, I know that they've lost, they've been scared off at times over previous years, but for the most part, you throw out a core of guys that are much better than virtually every other team. I do understand that the gap is closing a little bit, and we're seeing that in the draft, in fact, in the NBA with the French guys, but there isn't a team that has the depth that the U.S. team will ever and always have. And I think a great example of that, look at Jason Tatum. Steve Kerr didn't even play Tatum in the first game because of the numbers situation. And Tatum would obviously be the best player on virtually every other team. So to me, it just takes away from the drama. I mean, what, South Sudan is the opponent tomorrow. It's a 29-point spread, I believe.
Yeah, that's your boy Luol Deng is their coach.
Oh, okay. Do you want to break down the South Sudan backcourt next? Or, I mean, I'm not trying to be unpatriotic, but no, I'm not as stoked about some of these games as maybe I could be, but I'd rather watch a lot of the other sports. I was watching ping pong yesterday. I like some of the other storylines with the gymnastics competitors versus basketball. And I'm an apologist for the NBA, and I'm saying this, but
well, and one of the things I think I'll totally connect with you and almost enhance your point that was the story after game one, was that Steve Kerr didn't play Jason Tatum. It's like, look, are we reaching here for a storyline? Like that's what we're talking about. It just seems like we're bare bones as far as I don't know. I think the ratings, the Olympics overall are doing well. I'm not sure about basketball. I did watch, because I get up at ungodly hours. I watched a little bit of Giannis this morning, who was dominating. I watched Wembanyama on Sunday, and it's just fun to watch him, just because he's I have to admit, I think that you or I, like our era, when we came up and, Bargnani was the first pick, Darko. I think there's almost like a little bit of, it's another big foreign guy who's super exciting. But then if you actually sit down and watch Wembanyama, it's like, oh, man. That's not it at all.
Yeah, I know. And of course, it took a while for the Bargnani reputation and the image to be shed, where people were scared of drafting the Europeans number one or top of the draft because of sometimes their disappointments and this and that. But I don't think the stigma is there anymore. And I respect where the global game has gone. I just know with conviction, you're not going to ever find a team as loaded as the U.S. consistently.
Yeah.
And again, look, it's not like I'm rooting for them to struggle.
No.
I just would be shocked that, if they don't, take care of business. I mean, to me, frankly, I'm more entertained by the drama that some of the construction can ignite. Like, Jaylen Brown, right? He was spurned for Derek White, his Boston Celtics teammate. I didn't like how he responded to that, by the way. But
yeah, he didn't need to say he was just, he could have been like, hey, Jaylen Brown's the best, and or Derek White's the best, whatever. But he didn't say that. He didn't take.
No, he was being passive aggressive, I believe, right? In what he was saying. I guess Jaylen's been in the news quite a bit the last 2-3 weeks. I think he had the muttering, the lip reading with LeBron James Jr.
Yes,
and those remarks. But
what do you make of that? I haven't really asked you. What do you make of Bronny James and Summer League? What were your impressions? I know you watched a ton of those games.
I mean, from what I could gather, it was pretty much what we would have all expected based on his limited track record, at USC and the reputation he had. I mean, he didn't look like an NBA rotation guy to me.
He didn't.
I'm not. No, I don't think he's. He doesn't have the shot, and maybe defensively he can be adequate or above, but to me he's a G League project, which I think everybody projects him to be. I would have probably drafted him as well, based on the dad factor, unless you're in love with some intriguing prospect that you can stash for a couple of years overseas. But chances are, if you're the 55th pick in the draft, you're not making the league on a regular basis anyway. So I really don't want to hear about the whole nepotism deal. Those are relatively insignificant selections. The only part I may take exception with is the fact that they gave him a 4-year, $7.9 million deal, I think.
Yes.
And that's unheard of for 55th overall selections.
Unheard of. What do you think they're saying about this in other front offices? Or do they just chuck? When some of those guys are hanging out having a couple of drinks at Summer League, what do you think was said?
I mean, I don't think anybody would be surprised. I think it was kind of, the unwritten rule of what was going to happen. And I think Rich Paul was pretty much trying to deter all the teams leading up to that draft, saying, don't draft him in the second round. He's not going to sign.
Yeah.
Just don't. I mean, and who knows if that really influenced anybody anyway, but because from what I could tell, he just really wasn't a legitimate NBA prospect per se. But, and by the way, I think in that 4-year deal, maybe that fourth year may not be guaranteed. But look, if you're trying to appease the king, it's okay. And I think it's going to be a hell of a story, and it's going to be really an emotional pull.
Well, and the Lakers have historically done right by their stars. You look at Magic, right? Like pretty much a lifetime deal at $1 million a year. Kobe was grossly overpaid in that last contract, but it was pretty much like, hey, this is Kobe, we're going to take care of him. And now with LeBron, I would say that this Bronny James thing sort of leans towards that a little bit. And you look at Jeannie Buss. I mean, the Buss family is still pretty involved, or very involved.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to fault a team for being loyal to the icons. It probably doesn't necessarily project well moving forward. Like what they did with Kobe, for example. I think everybody realized they're just giving him his flowers late in his career. But did that really do anything for them over the next couple of years? They just patched together, overpaid guys in the dotage of their career, right? They had Steve Nash there, and they tried to throw Dwight Howard and, put some things together for name value, but that doesn't, of course, translate to success. But from what I've gathered, they're run like a real tiny operation, interestingly. It's just a very skeletal crew. But
what was your experience in LA, calling games at the Forum? What did you take away from that whole Lakers ambiance and lore? Besides Khloe Kardashian sitting a couple rows in front of you. Remember? Dude, I was doing the studio show for the Bobcats, and you're like, I think we can get her on. I'm like, there's no way this – remember?
Yeah. I'm starting to laugh about some of these snapshot memories. Yeah, I have some of those games in L.A. I remember being at the urinal next to Pete Sampras during halftime. It's like, why do I think of these random things, right? That have nothing to do with the actual game, right? But yeah, I mean, that's the type of crowd that you have there. No, I do remember, though, there was kind of a vibration in my system, the adrenaline that I had in LA that I didn't experience anywhere else. They had the theater lights where, the crowd was darker, but it was lit up, of course, on the court. It was just a very, theatrical scene there. And all the star power, and obviously with Kobe at the time calling those games, it was a big adrenaline rush. And we were courtside there as radio broadcasters, which, as you know, was not commonplace anymore.
Not at all.
A lot of times they bump you up. So you could really feel the energy down there. I remember like Luke Walton would always, chalk up right in front of me and, kind of his Kevin Garnett style. But I missed that. Yeah, there was great energy over there.
What are your impressions when we go back to Paris, USA basketball? You talk about magic, like the magic at the Forum. There is a magic with the Olympics. What have you taken away from it so far in watching it? Did you watch the opening ceremonies?
I did. Snoop Dogg to me highlights, what the entertainment value has been about. I do like some of the personalities. I'm not too high on the selection of Peyton Manning and Clarkson.
I thought it was way too much Kelly Clarkson. I love Kelly Clarkson. Kelly Clarkson's great as a singer. She seems super cool. She's got a great midday show. I kind of felt like they were crowbarring her in there on us. There was a lot of Kelly Clarkson for the Olympic opening ceremonies.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not here trying to crush an artist, but
no, and she's got a tough job to do. It's not if somebody taps you on the shoulder and says we're going to have you do this, you're not going to say no. And good for NBC for trying something new. I just thought it was when I was watching, I was like, this seems a little forced.
What did she provide? What entertainment value did you provide?
I don't know. I mean, does she bring in a certain demographic, right? I don't know. I was trying to think of all that until I decided it wasn't worth thinking about. But I certainly was interested in that. And I thought Peyton wasn't able to kind of be his self, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a little overexposure with Peyton.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I look, I don't mind him, but I'm not sure he brings a lot of the pop personally. Maybe you disagree. But he seems like he's obviously extremely likable and has a good sense of humor. But Snoop,
no,
to me,
but let me stop you there. That is a great point. Like, Peyton Manning's wonderful in his basement with his brother as an alternate cast from Monday Night Football. He's great if you ever even watch. I'll watch some of those shorts he does with ESPN. Omaha Productions, his company. You can watch that on ESPN Plus. He's done a bunch of different awesome things too. But that's like Peyton Manning with the Olympics. It's just kind of. And I don't know, or maybe I do know. Is it the NFL and the NBC relationship, right? I mean. There's all kinds of stuff going on there too, I'm sure, but I don't know. He's not even NBC really. I guess he's whatever he wants to be.
Yeah. To me, it just seems to be it's too much.
Yeah.
And speaking of broadcasters, to me, Mike Tirico, like he showed there in the opening ceremony in itself why he's probably the most dynamic, well-rounded sports broadcaster out there. Because, I mean, he pops over from the Scottish Open, right, doing golf like a week before. Of course, he does football. He's just brilliant. He can do studio work. And it's just seamless what he can do. I mean, he's just a bright person.
What do you think makes him so special? What separates him? Why is he different than, another incredible studio host?
Well, I just think he's just bright. And he's got this natural conversational style to him, and he's got a good personality as well. So he's got a good sense of humor. To me, he doesn't have that stench of ego that sometimes you can almost smell through the TV with a lot of broadcasters. That's just my opinion. Like, I can watch him do anything, and I'm partial. Like, I don't love when a lot of the networks will throw a studio guy into play-by-play.
Yeah.
But he's somebody that does it really well. But I mean, his studio work to me is top tier.
Mike Tirico, Bob Costas. Who do you have on that?
Oh yeah, that's a good call. I mean, that's
who do you have? Who do you pick of those two?
I can't put them both on the Mount Rushmore.
Oh well, you got to pick one. You got to pick one.
Wow.
Now I think to what you just said. Costas is one of my absolute heroes. If I had to pick a favorite of those two, it would just be Costas because he was a part of the magical part of my life as a kid, right? Much like he was yours. However, you did mention the stench of the ego. Now, I don't want to say it's a total – with Costas, it's more of a confidence, but I do feel like he's really providing some wisdom when he talks to his viewers, as opposed to Tirico, who kind of seems like – you're just talking to him.
Yeah, no, it's a great comparison. I was as big of a fan of Costas as any as well back in the day, but now I think it's Tirico's turn. So yeah, I'm gonna sit on the fence on that.
Costas is just so wildly talented. Go ahead.
I don't know if I remember who did you idolize, revere growing up?
Brent Musburger.
Philly guy?
Brent Musburger.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was because the NFL today, I think if I'm to break it down, it was on an early enough part of the day on Sunday where I watched the entirety of it, and Musburger was on the screen so much. And then college basketball, the Final Four and the NCAA tournament, he was the voice. And, when Villanova won in 1985, I think Gary Bender had it up until 84. And then Musburger took over and then it was Jim Nance in 1990. But those years of Musburger, they were special. Those 5 years for me. And he was he could make anything feel like it was so big, and he did it without cooking it up,
Yeah. And then the studio shows with.
The stories about him, he grew up. He's a sports writer. Do you know? Okay, I know you're going to know this answer, but his hometown. I think he's a Montana guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know the town, but he is a Montana guy. That's right.
You're a Billings, Montana guy.
I lived in Billings and Butte. Yep.
That's where you did like you did local radio, correct?
Well, in Montana it was minor league play-by-play.
Gotcha,
it was in rookie ball.
Okay.
It was Woodward, Oklahoma. I did local radio. Yeah.
You know who was, as we do a little sports potpourri, you know who was on the air, and I meant to ask you about this yesterday. When you were at, what was that sports radio in Vegas?
Sports fan. Radio
Okay. Was JT the Brick there?
Yeah.
So
I was.
Oh, he's, by the way, I heard him last night on Sirius. That guy is amazing. He is still such a talent, and he's so compelling. What were your memories of him, like JT the Brick?
Great, because when I was there, it was pretty early in my career. It was my second job, and so I was mainly a producer, and I did shows for Soren Petro and Chuck Powell, which they're still very prominent talk show hosts in different markets. I know Soren went back to Kansas City, where he's from. Chuck eventually went to Phoenix for a long time. But anyway, we would do a show from the MGM Grand Sportsbook and Casino. So it was cool. We would literally go there. I'd set up, the equipment and arrange the guests and all that. But the kicker to that job was on weekends, I got to fill in on the air doing updates, or on a really rare occasion, actually host a show. And JT was really cool because he saw my ambition, and when I got to know him and he knew of my drive to be on the air, I think I pitched to him, hey, what if I do some packages periodically that you could just play? And he did like a middle of the night show.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, hell yeah. He's like, anytime you want to do something, I'll play it for you. I mean, a lot of guys would have big leagued me, like, no, who are you? Like, you're a young producer. Like, I'm not going to play stuff.
Yeah.
But obviously he respected what I could do enough to throw it on. So I'll never forget that about JT.
What was who was your favorite talk radio host growing up in the New York metropolitan area, or was it somebody else outside of that?
Oh, it was Mad Dog, Chris Russo.
Yeah.
So I grew up with that fan in New York, and then I interned there one summer when I went to Ithaca College and came back.
Much bigger fan of the Mad Dog than Mike.
Yeah, I was not a fan of Mike, his personality, the way I got treated as an intern. Doggy was real. All right, I love how you're enjoying how I was treated horribly by Francesca. And Imus, by the way, he was pretty damn intimidating too. But I think he was doing it more in a kidding way. But Doggy treated the interns really nicely. So
so you're at FAN, and I'm guessing, was it 93, 92?
Yeah, it was 90. Actually, it was deferred. It ended up being 95.
Okay.
Because I did MSG Network 93, NBA Broadcasting 94, and FAN 95.
And so Imus was still on FAN in 95. Don Imus.
Mm-hmm.
And so what was he like in the morning? Like, he seems like a guy. We're kind of going inside baseball now, but he seems like the kind of guy who was like you mentioned, intimidating, but just unapproachable. Like, he was so famous. It's hard for people to really wrap your mind around that.
Yeah, like I didn't have the shift in the morning when he was there, but the one time I toured FAN, you know what? I'm trying to think what this was now. Okay, my encounter with him was actually in like 92 or 3.
Yeah.
It was 92. And he was definitely there then. And when Eddie Scazzeri, a producer, introduced me to him, he was giving me the tour, and it was in Imus's, back studio, hanging out after one of his shows. He's like, "What the hell do you want?" Like he literally said. I remember it was kind of in his kind of funny yet intimidating way.
Yeah.
And and that was it. That was my only exposure directly to him. So yeah, you're right. I'm trying to think. When I actually interned there a couple of years later, even if he was still there, I didn't overlap in that shift anyway. So.
What was your favorite part about Mad Dog?
Oh, I mean, I loved his energy, just his authenticity. So I enjoy watching him Wednesdays, with Stephen A. Just kind of brings back the old memories. But he was just a real person.
Yeah.
And again, off the air, he was just very kind, even for the lowly interns.
I remember you telling me a story that he would come out and put $100 down and be like, who can get me a guest? Like, right? Was that it?
You have a hell of a memory, so I'm not going to question it. I don't even remember that, but knowing you, it's probably accurate.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, not to go on a tangent, but like when I listen to you on all these podcasts, whether it's hosting or even as a guest, in the last week or two on a different show, I mean, your memory is crazy.
Well, you brought up the Mets and losing in '88. I mean, I'm still pissed off. They should have never gotten rid of Kevin Mitchell. They brought Kevin McReynolds over, and he was a numbers guy. But Kevin Mitchell is the first thing I thought of. I was like, I probably shouldn't talk about that because people think I'm a nut. But they got rid of Kevin Mitchell, and it took a lot of the teeth out of the organization and the clubhouse in a good way. He was a tough guy.
All right. I'm gonna test your memory on this.
Yeah.
What funny thing was Kevin Mitchell known to rub on himself?
Ooh, that's a good one.
He had a quirky idiosyncrasy.
I don't know. What was it?
Vicks Vapor Rub.
Oh, really?
He would like. I think he might even eat some of it, but he did something wacky with it. Like, yeah, he was known as like the Vicks Vapor Rub guy. Look it up, Google it.
I will. I mean, I've gone deep on, and I don't know if you're like this with me, but that whole era, 80s, 90s, something I'm so taken with. All right, back to current day before I got a couple more topics I want to hit with you. The Olympics in general. We talked about the opening ceremonies and we got sidetracked. What have you been most impressed with as far as NBC's coverage is concerned?
I mean, for what it's worth, the opening ceremony, I liked the way they constructed that. I thought that was really well choreographed, rehearsed. It was flawless. The bouncing from everybody, like all the different hosts, and Maria Taylor took it from Tirico, and then Hoda, and like on, and throwing some Snoop. It was just kind of fast hitting and moving. Yeah. It popped well with me there.
What do you make of the nation's affinity for Snoop Dogg? It is amazing. I mean, I've been a Snoop Dogg fan since I was a sophomore in high school, but that's a little different. That was really like my wheelhouse. I don't know if it was the Martha Stewart crossover, but people that happened, a decade or two ago or a decade and a half ago, but people love this guy. It's amazing.
Because it's like what I was saying, even with Doggy, like, I think when you have this natural authenticity about you, it comes through, and people know it's legit and real. And I mean, you can sniff an imposter pretty easily.
Yeah.
So I think, and he's staying true to who he is, right? You might think he might change things because he's on network TV with the Olympics, but no, he's still dancing around being Snoop. And I think people appreciate that.
Yeah.
I mean, even Tirico, you could tell, like, laughing when he brings on Snoop.
Yeah, everybody gets such a natural kick out of the guy. For lack of a better term, you would just say he's an absolute hoot. People love him.
Well, it's like, and again, I know it's my fault we go on all these tangents here, but like, are you familiar with Lil Dicky, the rapper?
Oh yeah, he went. He went to Richmond, and he's from my neighborhood, like from where I grew up.
I didn't realize he was directly from like the Villanova area. Yeah. Okay. But like he talked about that in the rap song with Snoop, right? So Snoop has the vision and the open-mindedness to bring a guy like that on, right? To like give him his huge break. And they come up with this great hit that has now, like 1 billion views a few years later. But that's what I love about Snoop. He's kind of a Renaissance man in his own circle.
What are your thoughts on? Have you? I know you're really out on the Olympic basketball, but have you watched any of Noah Eagle and Dwayne Wade?
Oh, a little bit, yeah. Noah's. I mean, he's really good. I'm
that
biased.
Guy is so awesome. I mean, it's just
he's really good.
Yeah.
And again, going back to FAN, that's where I got to connect with Ian Eagle, and forge a nice relationship with Ian over the years, and to see his son. I mean, following in his footsteps is
like,
gotta
I
be
don't give
amazing.
I don't care if the guy's 52 or 14. Like his skill level and his ability and really his feeling for history is so impressive. And as you know, and I know a little bit from what I've done in play-by-play, like those international games, it's not. Look, there's a lot of preparation there for any game you do, but when you're dealing with an international game and you have a roster of names that you're not dealing with Jackson and Smith and Adams, and Lauer. There is, to make that look easy is an art unto itself.
I struggled with Adetokounmpo as a rookie, right?
Yeah.
That's one guy I had to deal with because, and nobody knew what he was going to do. But,
and nobody knew how to say his name. I had his brother Thanasis in the G League, and I approached the G League like I was doing the NBA Finals. So I remember, I think I called people at this. He was with the Delaware Bluecoats, and I called people at their office, and I was like, "How do you say this guy Thanasis' last name?" I mean, it was tough. Yeah.
Well, of course, at the time, the Milwaukee Bucks radio voice was Ted Davis, and he said, "I just call him the alphabet." I just call him the alphabet.
and that's when he was, a late. What was he? Late first round pick, right?
He was 15th overall.
15th, so mid first rounder. So what have you thought? I kind of cut you off. Hang on one second. You ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Tobias.
Hey man, I'm a little worried.
Hold on, I'm talking to Scott Lauer right now. We're taping the Pete Souza show. Anything you want to say to Scott Lauer?
No, I just want to know, is he still a legend? That's all I want to know.
He's still a legend, Scott.
Depends on the day. Depends on the day.
He says depends on the day. Depends on the day.
Today I feel like a legend because I was invited on a Sousa's podcast.
Enjoy the show.
All right.
We'll talk later.
All right, buddy. I'll call you back. Bye.
You can't edit that out, by the
Oh,
way.
no. Yeah. So hold on. I want to get to Charlotte in a second, actually. But I want to hear your thoughts on Dwayne Wade and Noah Eagle. These are two guys that they probably haven't worked with each other very much. Dwayne Wade has this thing now about him where he's like brand new, but it's perfect. Like you feel like he talks on the broadcast exactly how he talks anywhere else. And a lot of times I feel like when a color analyst can do that, it's like magic. Brevin Knight was like that.
I'm sorry?
Brevin Knight was like that. He probably still is.
Yeah,
I haven't heard him on a Grizzlies call. But when Brevin talked on the air, it was just who he was.
Yeah, BK was great like that. I mean, absolutely right. When you've got an eloquent person who's knowledgeable, conversational, it's hard to go wrong. Yeah. BK. Yeah, I didn't stain BK's career. Yeah, he was able to plow through it, and despite my presence, he moved on and has had a great Grizzlies career.
He's amazing, and it seems like he really has found a home there in a sense where he's a favorite.
And we had a lot of those guys that you knew they would succeed as broadcasters or doing whatever they wanted to do. I mean, Steve Smith, when he was playing with us, I mean, you knew he was a professional. He was smart. He got it. He had a good business sense. You saw that with BK. Derek Anderson was another guy that I really respected and talking to. He could have done whatever he wanted. You just know it's there.
Yeah.
But I've been actually listening to a lot of Dwayne Wade, just a little bit, but I see what you mean. Just natural and smooth, and Noah's already got a presence about him, which is impressive at that age.
I remember Derek Anderson. He gave me a pair of Jordans. Remember now, I was a young guy. He gave me a pair of Jordans, and then I pushed the envelope, and I asked him for a pair of his flip-flops. Remember, I'm like 25. And he was like, no. I mean, he's got this locker full of, I was like, hey, like, DA, can I get, like, some of those flip-flops? He's like, no. He was.
Yeah, that's a little weird, asking for a guy's flip-flops.
They were
weird.
brand new, dude. Or maybe they weren't, actually. Who knows? Maybe you've worn them a couple times. So this is a bit of a somber topic, but one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on is that we lost Big Pat, legendary play-by-play guy, or play-by-play PA guy for the Bobcats and then the Hornets. You were there just like I was when he arrived. It was 2003, 2004, because I think it was even the summertime. I think Pat's first games were with the Hornets, but I think he was or with the Bobcats. But I think he was hired around the Sting, like summertime. But he was hired off an open tryout, pretty much. They did it like they're trying to drum up publicity. They basically did it like the American Idol. Do you have any early memories of Big Pat before you ascended to your position as an NBA radio guy? You were around him all the time because you were at every night as a studio, or you were at every game as a studio host.
Yeah, I mean, my memories of Big Pat were the same from day one as they were, until a year ago when I last spoke with him. He was just always so jovial, and loose. And of course, we had that fun thing where he would pop in the radio studio just to say hi, as he was strolling in the afternoon. And we'd say, "Where's Sousa?" in unison, like even when you were long gone, "Where's Sousa?" Because he would come in and he always asked for you, like, "Where are you?" Like, he'll be in, or he just went out. And so we'd carry on that tradition, even when you were long gone, right? And that kind of embodied his personality. I remember, well, this is really, really what means a lot to me on a personal level, is when I got let go 9 years ago, there were only two people that really stuck with me as great friends that they were back in the day. And that was you and Big Pat. And Big Pat, if you remember, the very next night, you were with me. You were staying at my house.
Yeah. That
very next night, we all went out with a bunch of guys. And Big Pat just, he consoled me, had my back the entire time. We'd stay in touch. He'd call me periodically and text. And, I don't get a lot of that from people, just he had nothing to gain. There was no ploy or reason for him to do any of this. It was just because he was just sincere. And, it's kind of like Nick Saban had that great quote: "People don't remember what you say. It's you remember how somebody makes you feel." And, Big Pat comes to mind as somebody that did that. He had that warm feeling that he provided, just in his presence. And he had a passion for doing what he was doing. So
that's an amazing recall. That's pretty good one, Lauer. I wasn't expecting that. Talk a little bit about. I hate saying talk a little bit about. You want to say that. What about his talent? It felt like the guy. He was very prepared, but it was clear when people from out of town would walk by him that everybody took note. He was very, very, very good, and you could almost say he was for everybody. He had a little bit of new flair, but he had the old school pipes and approach.
Yeah, no, definitely. He was one of those more boisterous types, but at the same time, he could take instruction and direction from, I guess, Jason or Emily or whoever was in charge of being by his side and kind of guiding him, and maybe trying to keep him in a certain lane. So I think, he kind of channeled his delivery and style a little bit, while maintaining his own personality. But, every organization has its own philosophy, right, on what the PA guy should sound like, and they'll hire appropriately. Like MSG, it's got the organ and a more like professional, sound to it. Others want more, vocal volume. But I love listening to him, and I remember, I guess he also was the PA announcer for all the big events too, like the ACC tournaments, right?
Yeah.
And you would hear him on TV
when they came through Charlotte. Yeah. And there was like some politics where sometimes he wouldn't do it, and he would bitch and moan like all of us would in a situation like that.
Right. And he could bitch and moan with the best of them, like in a funny way, like under his breath, like, these guys, I mean, what are you gonna do? Drop in some stronger language with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so great. Yeah, and there was a spot there. I think it became very apparent to people how good he was when he wasn't there. There was a spot, in like 2006 or 2007 when he wasn't with the team, and they had a cast of different guys come in, and they were, the feedback was not great for an NBA public address announcer.
Well, I know they had that wave, I'm trying to think. It may have been around 2011 or 12 or something, but it was even later, maybe a second time that they went through that period. But sometimes you don't realize what you have until you lose them at the time, right? And you certainly respect somebody's value when they're gone. But yeah, I mean, again, the thing is that I take great solace in knowing that he had a passion for doing what he was doing, and he was afforded the luxury of being in that position for a hell of a long time.
Yeah.
And not everybody can sit there for 20 years doing what you love to do. And, that kind of made me happy. And I'm still bummed though, that last time we spoke a year ago, we talked about, hey, let's get together.
Yeah.
He was up in Maryland at the time in the off season. I'm like, when you get back to Charlotte this year, hit me up. We need to get together, and you know how things go.
Yeah.
It's just easier to kick the can down the road, and sometimes you just don't do things. But
yeah, the cool thing is his, this kind of stuff. Like he's like one of those guys that'll stay with us for a very long time. We talk about Pat. You talk about it's going to be 20 years. I want to do a documentary podcast about, and I told you about this 10 years ago.
Yep.
I would like to do the first 5 years of the Charlotte Bobcats, an NBA organization. We're coming up on, of course, I dropped the ball, but we're coming because this would be the perfect time. We're coming up on 20 years since that organization. For lack of a better term, it was bananas. I mean, all the way across. That was my entree to an NBA organization, and having I was bananas too. So I'm not immune, but it was unique. It was a startup, right? But it was all over the place. Memories that you have from early on being a part, because it was your first professional organization as well. Did you think, hey, this is how it is? Or did you think, well, this is a little different?
I mean, as a startup, I think you think to yourself, all right, well, they need to get the kinks out. Things will kind of turn once they realize how the rhythm is supposed to be developed. But I mean, look, are we out of that passage now of X amount of years where you can speak the truth, right? It's like
statute of limitations is up, Scott.
Yeah, the statute, right? But I mean, we can get into that in your upcoming hopeful documentary podcast.
Yeah.
And by the way, I saw Matt Devlin you had on.
Yeah, he's the best.
Speaking of the early days.
Yeah.
There were always things that were funky, right? I mean, when you're talking about the Bob Johnson regime and C-set, and suddenly nobody could watch what he was trying to do with some of the games that I was doing play-by-play for and involved with, and of course
they put it on a TV where nobody could see it because he had a special Carolina Sports and Entertainment channel that nobody could access because it wasn't on the basic digital cable package.
No, and they're just wonky things that you can't do. The city just didn't embrace the team for a variety of reasons, and of course, ultimately, it comes down to the product. I mean, you don't have the right front office making good decisions, which they didn't have for basically 20 years. Yeah. I mean, it's been the driest run in just about NBA history. Things get old, but I mean, look, bottom line is I'll always be thankful of that opportunity in those years there. And, but we had some good memories.
We had some very good memories. I mean, it was a great time. It was very cool to work there. It was very cool. Look, it was the NBA. I liked Bronny Bickerstaff. I liked the coaching staff. I liked the direction the team was going, but there was, in my opinion, there was no patience from the front office. And then the stuff on the out, this is again my take. and the stuff on the outside of that was kind of like bonkers, right? Trying to engage with the community. It's just like we never really found our footing. But then I thought one of the most interesting components of the whole thing was that here comes Michael Jordan. And so, like, if anybody's going to save the day, it's going to be him. Yeah. But that was not the case. I mean, that was – I think that's a little – something people don't really talk about, and honestly, why would they? We're kind of over here splitting Charlotte Bobcats atoms. But, you know, Bernie Bickerstaff had that thing going in the right direction. I mean, he truly did. You disagree?
Well, look, you know my stance on athletics. It's more a coach can do some things, but for the most part, you need a great GM, decision maker, scouts. It's what you put out there for the coach. There's only so much you can do. And when you fail at the draft virtually every year, especially when you're a high lottery team, almost every single year, you're going to be on a treadmill toward mediocrity at best. And they just didn't have talent. So I don't care what kind of coach you have, there's only so much you can do. And the reality is, you know, their best players in the last 20 years were really just good, you know, 5th, 6th guys on really good teams. And there was no chance for them to be competitive based on the drafting. For the most part.
Last question for you. You talk about the draft. I'd have to ask the right people this question if we can move forward with this documentary podcast idea I have. Did they draft Sean May and Raymond Felton? Was that in the same year, 2005? Was that a PR move? Like, and how does that happen on a basketball level?
Exactly. I mean, come on, really? Did you really think those are the two best guys available at 5 and 13?
So my question is then, how does that happen?
Because again, that was part of the problem with the early stages of the Bobcats. They treated it like they were doing TV scouting. It was, oh, this guy did well in March Madness. That means that he'll automatically project to be a great pro. Adam Morrison, he did well. You know, they're just drafting big name guys who had stellar college careers, and that doesn't mean they're going to be good NBA players.
Did ownership have any? Were they? And again, we'd have to ask the right people, and there are answers out there. But was the front office being moved to make these picks because they were splashes?
Look, I don't know for sure, but I do know this, that they could have traded 5 and 13 to draft up to number 2 with Atlanta to get Chris Paul, and they didn't do it. And I knew when they bypassed that chance to get Chris Paul, who I felt was a future stud, maybe Hall of Famer, which he obviously became to be, I was just kind of shaking my head that night, like knowing that we missed out on a player that could have changed the franchise.
Yeah.
Just to get a couple of Tar Heels.
And by the way, that wasn't an unpopular opinion at the time. You're not sitting here with revisionist history, like, or hindsight being 2020, like, oh, this is what. There were a lot of people who thought that, like Chris Paul's the guy.
Yeah. And that to me was a microcosm of the way they did things for a long time.
Yeah.
So,
Lauer, this is the best. All right, so here's the deal. Here's your schedule. This was a nice little potpourri, but we're going to come back around in October and November and get ready for the NBA. And you're going to be one of our guys who gets us ready.
I love it, man. I appreciate it.
You going to tell Ashley I said what's up?
I will. Thanks a lot. She misses you.
All right, I appreciate your time so much. I'll let you get back to your life, but yeah, this is great. I appreciate. We got to do like a summertime sports potpourri. As perfect timing for that.
It's fantastic, man.
Will the mustache be there in later months? Is that a mustache? I like it.
I get bored. I change things up. We'll see what happens in the coming days.
I'm a fan.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Let's see if the ladies are too.
Speaking
of which, I gotta go.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, brother. Can't thank Scott enough. There's more meat on that bone, and I look to delving into it, maybe in a project of my own like we talked about. But in the meantime, enjoy the preseason and enjoy the rest of the Olympics. We're going to be back next week with an NFL-based podcast. Talk to a member of an NFL front office, a former member of an NFL front office who has stories for days and wisdom for light years. And she's a Raider, so I love it.
We are Rogue Media Sports.